All right, so you sent over these Bank of Maharashtra documents, their Q3 2024 results. We've got the official announcement, and we've got like a really deep dive into the numbers themselves, right?
Yeah.
And even a really slick investor presentation. So you want to get a real sense for how they're performing, right?
Yeah.
I think we can cut through all the jargon and find those little nuggets that you really need.
Exactly. It's like we're financial detectives in a way, piecing together the story of how their last quarter went.
I love that analogy. So first things first, the board met on January 15th in Pune to sign off on all these unaudited results. And good news, the auditors gave them a clean bill of health, an unmodified opinion, as they call it.
Yeah, that's a great starting point for us. It means we can be confident the numbers are reliable and they'll give us an accurate picture of the bank's, financial health.
Perfect. So let's get to the good stuff. How much money did they actually make?
Well, hold on to your hats because they reported a net profit of over 1,306.45 crore for Q3. Yeah, that's a 35.82% jump compared to last year. And for the first 9 months, they're sitting at a very pretty 4026.71 crore profit.
Yeah, those are some seriously impressive numbers. It's not every day you see growth like that, especially in this economy. What's the secret sauce behind all these profits?
Well, let's take a look at some of the drivers here. Their total business, meaning the combined value of deposits and loans, is up by a solid 16.86% year on year.
Nice.
Deposits alone jumped 13.54%, with a noticeable shift towards term deposits. That tells me people are feeling good about parking their money at the Bank of Maharashtra for the long haul.
Interesting. So they're attracting more deposits. Are they putting all that money to work? What's happening on the lending side?
Absolutely. They're not just sitting on cash. Advances, or loans as you might call them, are up a whopping 21.19%. And a big chunk of this growth is coming from loans to individuals, small and medium businesses, MSME, and the agriculture sector. Looks like they're strategically targeting these key areas of the economy.
I see. I'm starting to see a pattern here. Growth, growth, growth. But there was one thing in the documents that made me scratch my head. Something called uh, a Qualified Institutional Placement, or QIP. I don't know. Can you break that down for me?
Yeah, of course. So think of it like this. Imagine you own a house, right? And you want to do some major renovations, but you need extra cash. You might take out a second mortgage, borrowing from a lender who sees the potential in your property.
Right.
Well, a QIP is similar. Companies like Bank of Maharashtra can issue shares directly to big investors, like mutual funds, boosting their capital. And back in October, they raised a cool 3,500 crore this way, giving them, more fuel for their lending engine.
So it's like giving the bank a bigger toolbox to work with, essentially. Okay, so they're raking in deposits, lending like crazy. But are they lending responsibly? What about the quality of these loans? We don't want a repeat of, the subprime mortgage crisis, right?
You bring up a very crucial point. That's where we need to analyze the asset quality or the health of their loan portfolio. As of December 31st, their gross non-performing assets, essentially the bad loans, stand at 1.80%. Now, this is actually an improvement from 2.04% year ago.
So lower NPAs are a good thing.
Right.
Does this mean they're getting better at choosing who to lend to?
Exactly. It really suggests they're managing risk effectively and making smarter lending decisions. This improvement is actually particularly noteworthy considering the overall economic climate. While the entire Indian banking sector is seeing an upward trend in asset quality, Bank of Maharashtra seems to be outperforming the average.
That's great news. They're not just riding the wave, they're actually like paddling ahead of it. Now, I noticed their investor presentation highlighted their digital banking units. What's the deal with those? Are they just fancy ATMs or something more?
Much more than just ATMs. Think of them as branches, but designed for the digital age.
Hmm.
A seamless blend of technology and personalized service. It's too early to tell from the financials exactly how well these units are performing, but the fact that they're so, front and center in the presentation tells us this is a key part of their strategy.
I'm sensing a theme here. Bank of Maharashtra is all about growth, but they're also embracing technology and innovation to stay ahead of the curve. It's like they're a traditional bank with a Silicon Valley mindset. But let's take a peek behind the curtain for a second. I noticed something kind of interesting in the auditor's report. Something about having only one independent director and needing a special provision to approve the results.
Good catch. You're right. That is kind of unusual. Typically, companies strive for a diverse and independent board of directors to ensure robust oversight and good corporate governance.
Right.
Having only one independent director, does raise some questions about their decision-making processes. And that could make, some investors a little uneasy.
Hmm. Yeah, I can see why that might raise some eyebrows. Speaking of potential concerns, the auditors also highlighted some emphasis of matter points regarding COVID-19 provisions and digital fraud.
Hmm.
Should we be hitting the panic button yet?
Not necessarily, but it is smart to, be aware of these potential risks. Remember, auditors are like, watchdogs. Their job is to sniff out areas that need extra attention. Bank of Maharashtra has set aside a 1,200 crore cushion related to potential, COVID-19 fallout,
Yeah.
which shows they're being cautious about loan defaults stemming from the pandemic's economic impact.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like they're building a little safety net just in case things get bumpy. What about this digital fraud piece? That sounds a little unnerving, especially with all this talk about their digital push.
Well, it's definitely, a valid concern in today's digital world. The report flags 172 fraud cases in the past 9 months. But the silver lining here is that a significant chunk of those were related to digital payments, where the bank actually didn't lose any money.
Oh.
But still, they've wisely set aside funds to cover potential losses from the remaining cases, which shows, they're taking this risk seriously.
So they're acknowledging the risks
Yeah.
and they're taking steps to mitigate them.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, we're going full speed ahead on this digital highway, but we're wearing our seatbelts.
Uh-huh.
So before we get too deep into risk management, let's maybe shift gears a little bit and take a closer look at that visually appealing investor presentation. What are some of the key highlights that jump out at you?
Well, the first thing that really grabs your attention is their impressive growth trajectory, especially when it comes to advances and profitability. They do a really great job visually representing just how much progress they've made.
Right.
The presentation also breaks down these key financial ratios, including their capital adequacy ratio.
Now, I'll be honest. Capital adequacy ratio sounds like something I should have learned in finance class, but promptly forgot. Could you give me a quick refresher on what that means and why it's important?
Yeah, so think of it like a financial safety net for the bank. It measures how much capital they have compared to their risk-weighted assets, basically their loans. A higher ratio means they're better prepared to absorb any potential losses. And Bank of Maharashtra is sitting pretty at 18.71%, well above the regulatory requirement.
So a higher capital adequacy ratio basically means they're financially strong and ready to weather any storms. That's reassuring. Now, they also provide a really detailed breakdown of their loans by sector, right? I'm curious to see where they're focusing all their lending efforts.
They certainly do, and you won't be surprised to hear that retail, MSME, and agriculture are their top priorities. These sectors are considered the engines of growth for the Indian economy, and they offer a really good balance of risk and reward for the bank.
Okay, so it's like they're placing strategic bets on the sectors that they believe will drive India's future. Let's take a quick break and give our listeners a chance to absorb all this information. We've covered a lot of ground already, but there's still more to uncover.
Yeah, agreed. We've just scratched the surface of these documents. Let's regroup and dive into some of the remaining nuggets of wisdom hidden within their reports. See you in part 2.
Welcome back. I hope you're ready for more because we're about to unearth some even deeper insights into Bank of Maharashtra's performance.
Yeah, I'm all ears. One thing that really caught my eye in their investor presentation was this concept of phygital. Is that a typo, or is this like some new banking lingo I need to know?
Oh, it's not a typo.
Mhm.
Phygital is definitely a buzzword, and it's, a trend we're seeing across the industry. Think of it as a blend of the physical and digital worlds,
Okay.
creating this, seamless experience for customers.
Ready.
You can imagine, walking into a branch and having all your online banking information instantly accessible, or getting personalized advice through like a video call with a bank representative.
So it's like they're bridging the gap between, traditional banking and the digital age.
That's pretty clever. And speaking of expanding their reach, the presentation also talks about their branch expansion strategy. What's the game plan there?
Well, they're going big on expansion, especially in rural and semi-urban areas where banking services are, kind of limited.
Right.
This aligns perfectly with their focus on financial inclusion.
Yeah.
reaching those underserved communities and bringing them into the formal banking system.
That makes a lot of sense. Tapping into those new markets could be like a huge growth opportunity for them. But expansion comes with risks too, right? How are they making sure they're not overextending themselves?
You're absolutely right. Growth needs to be sustainable.
Yeah.
That's where the risk management strategy comes into play.
Hmm.
And the investor presentation, gives us a little glimpse into their multi-pronged approach, they're tightening up their credit appraisal processes, basically being more careful about who they lend to. They're also monitoring these early warning signals for, potential loan defaults, and they're beefing up their fraud detection and prevention systems.
So they're not just throwing caution to the wind and expanding recklessly. They're taking, calculated risks and putting safeguards in place. That's reassuring to hear. Now, I know we've touched on the detailed financials already, but is there anything else in there that's worth highlighting? Any surprises lurking in the numbers?
Well, remember how we talked about the shift in their deposit mix towards term deposits? That trend is even more apparent when you dive into the detailed financials.
Okay.
It indicates a growing confidence among customers who are willing to lock in their money for longer periods.
And how does that impact the bank's overall financial picture?
Well, it gives them a more stable and predictable source of funds. Think of it like this. If you know you have a certain amount of money coming in every month, you can plan your expenses more effectively. Right. Well, for Bank of Maharashtra, this stable deposit base allows them to lend for longer durations and potentially earn higher interest margins.
Ah, so it's a win-win situation. Customers get a, reliable return on their savings, and the bank gets the resources it needs to fuel its lending activities. It's like a, well-oiled financial machine. I'm curious about their loan portfolio. We know they're big on retail, MSME, and agriculture, but are there any other trends emerging in their lending activities?
One trend that really stands out is their growing exposure to the renewable energy sector.
Interesting.
The financial statements show a significant increase in loans for solar and wind power projects. This aligns perfectly with the government's push for clean energy and positions Bank of Maharashtra as a leader in green financing.
That's fantastic. They're not just following the market. They're anticipating future trends and aligning themselves with sustainability goals. It's like they're banking on a greener future, both literally and figuratively. I'm really impressed with their forward-thinking approach. But let's be realistic for a moment. No business is perfect, and there are always challenges kind of lurking around the corner. What are some potential headwinds or areas of concern that Bank of Maharashtra might face?
You're right. No company operates in a vacuum. And the investor presentation acknowledges some potential challenges, particularly the rising interest rate environment and increasing competition in the banking sector.
Can you break those down for me? How could those factors, impact Bank of Maharashtra's performance going forward?
Well, when interest rates rise, borrowing becomes more expensive. This can dampen loan demand as individuals and businesses hesitate to take on, new debt.
Right.
And this could, put a little bit of a dent in the bank's revenue growth and profitability.
So it's like a balancing act for them.
Exactly.
They need to attract borrowers with, competitive interest rates while also managing their own borrowing costs.
What about the competition? How are they stacking up against, other players in the market?
Well, the Indian banking landscape is incredibly competitive with, both public and private sector banks vying for customers. And Bank of Maharashtra faces pressure from larger banks with, deeper pockets, more established digital platforms, and wider branch networks.
So they're not just battling economic headwinds, they're also facing off against, some pretty formidable opponents. How are they responding to all these challenges? Are they just trying to weather the storm, or are they taking, proactive steps to stay ahead of the game? They're definitely not sitting still. They're focusing on differentiating themselves through, personalized customer service, building relationships, and offering these, niche products that are tailored to specific customer segments. They're also, leveraging technology to streamline their operations and enhance convenience for their customers.
Okay, so it sounds like they're, playing to their strength and finding creative ways to stand out in a crowded market.
Exactly.
But amidst all this talk about numbers and strategies, it's easy to lose sight of the human element.
Absolutely. Behind every financial transaction, there's a person or a business trying to, to achieve their goals, and that's something that, Bank of Maharashtra seems to genuinely understand. Their focus on financial inclusion, their, customer-centric approach, and their emphasis on ethical banking practices all point to a commitment to serving the community.
I love that. It's refreshing to see a bank that's not just chasing profits, but also, trying to make a positive impact. Now, before we move on to the final part of our deep dive, I have one last question. With their ambitious growth plans and aggressive digital push, are there any potential risks or, downsides we haven't considered?
That's a great question, and it is important to be aware of the potential pitfalls. While their digital transformation is commendable, it also exposes them to cybersecurity threats and the ever evolving landscape of online fraud.
Right.
They need to be vigilant about protecting their systems and their customers' data.
Yeah, you're right. That's a critical consideration in today's digital world.
Yeah.
And as they venture into, new markets and expand their loan portfolio, managing risk effectively becomes even more crucial. Any missteps could, derail their progress and erode investor confidence.
Exactly. It's a delicate balancing act. Bank of Maharashtra needs to be agile, adaptable, and acutely aware of, both the opportunities and the challenges that lie ahead.
Well said. I think we've covered an incredible amount of ground in this deep dive. We've analyzed their financials, explored their strategic initiatives, and even pondered some potential risks and challenges.
Indeed, but there's still one piece of the puzzle missing. Their investor relations and communication strategy. How effectively are they, conveying their story to the market and building trust with investors? That's something we'll explore in our final segment.
Excellent point. Stay tuned, dear listener, for the grand finale of our deep dive. We'll unveil the secrets of their, investor relations magic and leave you with some thought-provoking questions to ponder. Okay, so we're back for the final act of our Bank of Maharashtra deep dive. We've gone through all their financials, we've broken apart all their strategies, and we've even looked around for some potential risks. So now it's time to see how they're packaging all this information, right?
Yeah.
And presenting it to the world, specifically investors, right? Because even the bad company, needs to tell a good story if they want to attract those who hold the purse strings.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. It's like a chef, who's creating a culinary masterpiece. No matter how delicious the dish is, it still needs that little extra touch of presentation to really entice the diner. So how is Bank of Maharashtra, plating their investor relations efforts?
Well, from what I can tell, they're taking a multi-pronged approach,
Yeah.
starting with transparency and accessibility.
Yep.
The investor presentation that we've been going through is a good example, right?
Right.
It's well structured, it's visually appealing, and it gives this really clear snapshot of their performance and goals.
Absolutely. I mean, they're really making it easy for investors to kind of understand their story. But beyond just the presentation, they're actively engaging with the investor community through things like earnings calls, analyst briefings, and conferences.
Right.
These interactions provide a platform for this direct dialogue,
Yeah.
addressing investor questions and concerns. They also have a dedicated investor relations section on their website, kind of like a one-stop shop for their financial reports, corporate governance documents, and all this other key information.
So they're putting themselves out there, and they're making themselves accessible. But are they, effectively communicating their key messages and standing out from the crowd? Because let's face it, the financial world is a very noisy place.
That's the million-dollar question. And from what I've observed, I think they're doing a good job of highlighting what makes them unique. Their communication consistently emphasizes their focus on growth, profitability, and risk management. They're also showcasing their strengths, things like their strong foothold in the MSME and agriculture sectors and their commitment to financial inclusion.
Yeah, it's smart to play up those strengths. It gives them a a distinct identity in a sea of banks. But as we all know, actions speak louder than words. Right? Are they walking the talk?
Their financial performance definitely suggests they are. The consistent improvements in key metrics like profitability, asset quality, and capital adequacy really give credibility to their story. They're also delivering on their strategic initiatives with tangible progress in digital banking and branch expansion.
So they're backing up their words with, concrete results. That's crucial for building, long-term trust with investors. But the world's constantly changing, right? And no company can afford just stand still. What should Bank of Maharashtra be doing to maintain this positive momentum and stay ahead of the curve?
Yeah, that's where things get interesting. They need to be proactive,
Yeah.
anticipating these future trends and challenges. The banking industry is undergoing this really rapid transformation driven by the rise of fintech, evolving customer expectations and this ever increasing regulatory scrutiny.
So basically, they can't just, rest on their laurels and assume that what worked yesterday is going to work tomorrow. So what specific steps can they take to navigate this kind of evolving landscape?
Well, they need to double down on their digital capabilities, exploring these collaborations with fintech companies and tailoring their products and services to meet the changing needs of customers. They should also, keep a close eye on these emerging technologies like artificial intelligence and blockchain, to explore potential applications in banking.
It's a reminder that in today's world, continuous innovation is the key to survival, let alone success. But let's bring it back to our listener for a moment. We've armed you with a very comprehensive understanding of Bank of Maharashtra's Q3 performance, but what does it all mean for you?
Well, if you're interested in investing in the Indian banking sector, Bank of Maharashtra definitely presents a very, very compelling case. They've demonstrated strong financials, a clear strategic vision, and a real commitment to responsible banking practices.
But like any investment, it's crucial to do your own research, right? Weigh the potential risks and rewards and make sure that your decisions are aligning with, your personal financial goals and risk tolerance.
Yeah.
We're just providing the pieces of the puzzle. It's up to you to assemble them.
Exactly. The information we've shared today is a starting point.
Yeah.
Take this knowledge, connect it with your understanding of the market, and see where it leads you.
Perhaps you'll uncover something that we missed, or develop a completely different interpretation. That's the beauty of a deep dive. It's a journey of discovery, and often the most valuable insights are the ones that you uncover yourself.
So as you continue exploring the world of finance and investment, remember this: knowledge is power, but only when it's understood, applied, and constantly evolving. Stay curious, keep learning, and never be afraid to challenge assumptions.
Beautifully said. And on that note, we'll wrap up this deep dive. We hope you've enjoyed the journey and feel empowered to navigate the fascinating world of Bank of Maharashtra and the financial markets in general.
Until next time, happy investing.